I'm ready. Excellent. Two people waiting. My goodness. Three people. Oh man, I'm the luckiest person ever. Luckiest music teacher ever. Happy St. Patrick's Day, indeed. Mm. I don't want to spoil the ending. All right. Who do we have here? We've got Laura Kingen. Thank you so much for joining in. Who else is here? Say hi for me. I try to make it fun, or at least bearable. This is definitely the most difficult subject to talk about because it's so arbitrary. It is based on patterns, it's based on kind of like math way back in the day. It's really the most kind of non-intuitive yet intuitive at the same time. It's just difficult to translate it from what your intuition understands and then like giving them names. It's kind of the hard part of the whole thing. And that's really where most of us, I think, give up. We give up because we don't know what to call things. We don't know um like what's the proper name for something. And so we kind of stop because we don't like to be wrong, right? It takes a lot of studying, a lot of memorization to really get the hang of how scales and keys all work together. I'm going to do my best to make it very easy to understand, even though you don't know anything about music. Hi, Sophie. Who's my third person? I bet it's Laura logged in on another device, isn't it? All right. Well, wonderful. That means we have an extra spectator between the two of you. Thank you for your chats. I really love seeing all that. All right. You can remain a mystery, mystery number 3. That's okay. We're going to go ahead and get started in a minute here. I'm going to play you a couple of scales. Here's the scale that we all know and love. The major scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la, so, fa, mi, re, do. A little louder than that one. It's the major scale. And then we got a minor scale. One a little more relaxed sounding, a little more sad sounding, maybe. And then we can go kind of in a lot of different directions from there. Our major scale can be altered in a very small way. We can call this Lydian. Not quite the same as the major scale. Then we have our minor scale. And we can alter our minor scale with one small note. So one of the more important things to take away from this lesson is that even whenever you have a scale and you're conforming to a particular scale, each note has its own function. So even if a note is outside of the scale, it functions. It has a sound that only sounds like that note and only does what that note does. Hi, Dana. Good to see you. All right, it's 7:04. All righty, we'll go ahead and get started. We'll get started with our standard warm-ups. We're going to breathe. We're going to take control of our voices. If we take control of the air that we use for our voice, we will have a good chance of controlling our voice. I'm living proof that you still have got to do a lot of work, even whenever you can control your breath. So let's take a nice big deep breath in, and then we'll let that deep breath out, controlled and slow. Make it as long as you can make it. So here we go. We'll breathe in. Hold it. Great. So you should be feeling a little bit more relaxed now that you've done that. It just feels good to take a nice deep breath. Your shoulders, your chest, your neck, your face should all start loosening up a little bit. Let's do it again. Big deep breath in. Hold it. All right, so you should be feeling pretty loosey-goosey now. Let's do it one last time. Breathe in. Hold it. And out. Excellent. You should be like ragdolling now. You should be feeling very loose and light. Excellent. Let's do the same thing now, but let's create a tone. Let's try and create kind of a semi-pure sound. Pure sounds are actually kind of annoying to listen to. Our voices are mixtures of sound. They're very complex sounds, not simple sounds. We're going to try our best to create a focused, pure sound with an ah. So you'll breathe in, just like we did before. And then on the breathe out, you'll say ah, and you'll try and make that ah last as long as possible. Breathe in. Hold it. I'm giving you a moment just in case your ah lasts longer than mine does. Let's do it again. This time I want you to say ooh. Breathe in. Hold it. Ooh. Excellent. And our third and final time, I'd like you to say eh, eh. Ready? Breathe in deep. Hold it. You can notice whenever I start running out of breath, my becomes a little less pretty. It doesn't have that pure, nice, smooth quality to it. It kind of sounds like it's choking out, right? Run out of air, run out of voice. That's how it works. All right. So did anybody beat me? Did anybody have a larger ah, a longer ooh, a longer eh? Some of you have been practicing all week. Are you already showing improvement? Is your big balloon getting bigger? Are you expanding your whole body out? You got that diaphragm muscle down there. If you pull that diaphragm down, you can make more space for air. And then you can also push that sound out. All right. I'm going to assume nobody beat me because nobody chatted. Did you beat me? Good job. Good job, Dana. Good job, Mom. Well done. I feel like my was pretty short. I think that was bad on me. Awesome. Okay, so we've got our voices nice and warmed up. We're going to get on to our hands and our rhythm, and then we're going to start singing a couple of little tiny melodies, and we're going to explore the idea of moving through scales and what effect that has on us whenever we hear scales being changed or keys being changed. So wiggle out your fingers. Good. Try maybe just the pinky. But I know these two come in a package deal. They go together. Pinky, ring finger, middle finger, wiggled. Yeah. First finger, wiggled. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Thumbs. For all you people on your phones, those thumbs get a lot of workouts. We're going to warm them up anyway. All right. Those fingers are good. Wrists are good, right? Be gentle. Gentle, gentle. Elbows. Shoulders. Everything should be very loose. You don't want to force your body to do anything. Your body will fight you every time. All right, you're nice and relaxed and wiggled out. So we're gonna say a couple of syllables. They belong to scales, and we're gonna clap our hands at the same time. So let's get going. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, repeat after me. 3, 2, 1. Do, re, mi. 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 Mi, re, do. Mi, re, do. Mi, re, do. Mi, re, do. Do, re, mi. Do, re, mi. Mi, re, do. Mi, re, do. Do, re, mi. Mi, re, do. We're going to change it up a little bit here. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Do, mi, so. Do, mi, so. Do, mi, so. Do, mi, so. So, mi, do. So, mi, do. Do, mi, so. Do, mi, so. So, mi, do. So, mi, do. Great, and you can stop there. So what we've done here is we've sung some notes that all belong together. These notes are related to each other. In a sense, what they do is they suggest that in the end, after hearing all of these sounds, we should end up on one sound at the end. We're going to have a starting point, and then we'll have an ending point that quite frequently ends up being the starting point. We go back home. All right, so one more time. Do, re, mi. Oh, let's try that again. Do, re, mi. Do, re, mi. Mi, re, do. Mi, re, do. Do, mi, so. Do, mi, so. So, mi, do. So, mi, do. Excellent, and you'll stop there. These sounds suggest each other. These sounds are strongly, strongly related to each other to the point that the first sound that we sang, do, will be what all of those notes are pointing towards. So wherever we start, the listener tends to think that that note is the starting and the ending point. You could think of it as kind of a musical punctuation mark. If you start there, it's generally a good idea to end there. It will sound like you've completed your thought and put a little period on the end. All right. Any questions so far? All right. No questions so far. So we are going to move on to talking about how these sounds, if they're going to suggest each other, we're going to explore if we can move that sound. Check it out. I'll go ahead and grab an instrument to help us for this portion. Alrighty, I'm going to play in the key of G. Now, I think I started out saying that a lot of the things in music are kind of arbitrary. A lot of the names that we give things are just arbitrary. Somebody came up with it a long time ago, and it's stuck and it's worked, and here we are living with the decisions that came from 1,000 years ago. But it's fine. What we need to do is bridge the gap between what you hear and what you feel, and then what it's called. So we're going to sing do, re, mi, re, do, mi, so, mi, do. Now, again, these do, re, mi's are all completely arbitrary. We could call them anything we want. We could give them numbers, and sometimes that's even easier. So 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. 1, 3, 5, 5, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. Do, re, mi, re, do. All right, we're in the key of G, and we're firmly rooted that G, this sound, is home. It's our starting point, and it's our ending point. Do, re, mi, re, do. Let's move home. An unrelated note, a note that doesn't really point towards G, but we're going to go ahead and make that home now. Do, re, mi, re, do. Are you repeating after me? Do, re, mi, re, do. We're going to move home again. Do, re, mi, re, do. Do, re, mi, re, do. Do, re, mi, re, do. Great. One more time, upward. Do, re, mi, re, do. Downward. Do, re, mi, re, do. 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 Excellent. I hope you followed along with me. I hope you used your voice and repeated after me. What happened there? What was the effect of singing the same the same kinds of sounds? They all were meant to point somewhere, but then we kept moving them. They always sounded like they belonged together, but they didn't sound like they belonged to the previous collection of notes. Isn't that right? Now, you could say that they don't belong, but we're also very good at finding patterns, and we're very good at knowing that, okay, well, if I hear this, our brains are pretty good at picking out, oh, there's a pattern happening here. I can hear these sounds that are related to each other that keep kind of getting moved places. All right, what's the effect? What's the effect? What's happening? What's happening? What feeling do you get whenever you hear those sounds being moved around? Kind of like maybe like you're wandering around and you don't really know where home is. Yes, we're playing a scale. We're playing notes that point someplace. That's correct, Dana. But we keep moving that place. We keep suggesting a new home. So what if I keep moving home upward? What's the effect? What if I keep moving home downward? What's the effect? My opinion would be very, very much akin to the melody talk that we had. Whenever you're moving your melody upwards, let's say in a key, in a scale, great, Dana, it's getting higher, right? Or it's getting lower. What's the effect? What's the feeling? How does it feel? The answer should be very similar to the discussion we had about melodies. Whenever your notes are going upwards, you tend to get that feeling of hope, right? You get that feeling of, we're taking off, we're taking flight, positivity and energy, upbeat feelings usually. And when we go downward, what do we feel like? Maybe like falling. That was a great example from the melody exercise. Falling down, maybe getting like a relaxed feeling that doesn't require energy and jumping around. Maybe you can be peaceful. Maybe you can be sad. All right, so we're talking about the effect of moving home, right? Whenever we play a scale, we're choosing out notes that suggest to us where we should end up, suggest to us where that musical period should be. So here's a major scale for you. This scale points to wherever we started. If I have a major scale, let's say the key of G major, it's going to point me constantly to G. Right. So if I don't go to G, you're going to feel like there's still something else that needs to be said. Check it out. You want to hear. Let me go the other way. You want to hear something else. So this is the whole point of why you should care about a scale. A scale helps you to communicate that idea of we started here, we've gone on an adventure, we've told a story, and we are now, once you're done, ready to go back home. Back to that place that all of your notes have been suggesting to the listener so that you could put that musical period onto the end of it. So in the key of G, G is home. G sharp. A. A sharp or B flat. All of these scales are 100% legitimate ways to play music. What's important to understand is that the notes suggest to the listener where you should be going to end your ideas. Right. So we've talked about scales. We've talked about this major scale. We can call it do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. We can call it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All of those names are totally fine. What's important is that they're all leading you somewhere. Every sound has a function in a scale. So I'm going to write for you every note in music, and it's not going to take that long. Take a moment. Think about melodies. Think about keys. Think about songs that you've listened to that maybe sound very exotic and different. Maybe they use a different kind of scale. Maybe they use different kinds of notes that suggest different kinds of homes. Maybe they move homes. Maybe they go to grandma's house or to a cousin's house. Think about melodies that really stand out to you. See if you can pinpoint where they start maybe going a little out of key. Maybe they sound a little different, like they're suggesting a new home. I'm going to go ahead and write down what we call a chromatic scale. It is every note in music. And I'm going to have to do it a little bit lazy because my board is so small. So we're going to try and make an allowance to make it make sense for you. All right, we have here 8 boxes for 8 different sounds, 7 different sounds. One sound is duplicated. So I'm going to give you the easiest scale, the scale that we all start talking about whenever we start learning music, the C major scale. It uses nothing but the alphabet, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Start again at C. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. C is home in the key of C. All the notes function to bring you back home, to do, to tonic, to one. All these names for the same thing. Home, tonic, do, one, starting. Alrighty, so we've got all the notes in the C major scale. All of these notes point you to C. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, la, so, fa, mi, re, do. Do, re, mi, re, do. Do, mi, so, mi, do. You can mix them all up and you can suggest different notes, different flavors, different degrees of going home or leaving home. It's all about how you mix them up is how you make your story, but they're all pointing to C. That's the important part of a scale. There are some other notes that aren't part of this scale that are still fair game. We could still use them, but we need to be real smart. We need to know that using those notes that aren't related to C quite so strongly are going to suggest to the listener a different home. They're going to take you away from C and suggest going someplace else. And if we're smart about the way that we do that, we can add a lot of complexity and interest to our music without sounding like strange. And something like that just kind of comes with hearing a lot of different kinds of musics and knowing when you want that feeling. This is the intellectual side of it all. If you know the feeling you're going for, you can eventually find it. But if you know this part of it, if you know the organization, you know kind of how the patterns work, then you can elicit that feeling before you even think about that feeling. You might think, this song needs something. Why don't I try suggesting a new home? Give it a little color, give it a little flair. we'll go even farther from home on this adventure. These are the notes that do not belong to the C major scale. All right. So hopefully you can see that. It's a little bit small. But basically what we've done is we found little in-between parts that don't necessarily belong to our scale, but they're still sounds and they're still completely viable options for colors and new ideas in your melodies or your music. So we skip over those. This is what it sounds like if we don't use our scale. If we play all the notes, this is what we get. Let's say I start on G. All right, and we'll go downward. All right. How does that sound? Does that sound musical? Does it sound like it's leading you someplace? Is it clear what these notes are suggesting to you? Up and down the stairs. I like it. So we've played every single note that we really have access to in our musical system. There's some trouble with playing every single note. We're mixed up. We don't really know where to start and where to stop. To be honest, I could start or stop anywhere I wanted to, and it would be pretty much as acceptable as any other place. You could say that the note you start on would be maybe a little more understandable, but for the most part, we're really muddying the waters whenever we play every single note. We're taking spoon and just we're ripping the top, right? And the top just goes spinning, and we don't really know where we're about to end up. When we use a scale, we have a real clear idea of what to expect, right? A major scale. Right? That G sounds, that last note and that first note, they sound very understandable. And part of that is just because we've gotten used to it over our entire lives. Very arbitrary, again. But when we go through our chromatic scale, we are not really suggesting anything to the listener because we've just vomited up every single note that there is. There's no story being told. It's almost as if we were to just take the whole alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and just A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. All those letters. We just threw all those letters. We just threw them up in the air. We didn't make any words. We didn't really say anything. We didn't use grammar. We just threw all the words out there and said, here you go. Make some words yourself. That's not your job as an artist. Your job as a musician or as an artist is to say what you have to say. These are all of your words. These are all of the letters in your alphabet, but you need to arrange them. You need to make sense out of them. And you also need to understand the expectation that your listener has. If you play music that sounds like this, well, it might be interesting, and I kind of like it a bit, but we're also not really following the rules. We're not meeting the listener where they are. There's nothing wrong with breaking expectations. There's nothing wrong with going out of scale, but you need to understand that the listener has an expectation in most cases. They want to hear this classic story of leaving home and coming back home. That's what our scales do for us. All right, any questions so far? Right. Yeah, I guess I can make non-tonal music sound at least interesting. Uh, and that's actually a good point to mention the difference. Tonal music is music that conforms to this idea of sound, the idea that all these notes should function. And if you don't follow their function, you're deviating from tonality into atonality. Whenever you're playing with the chromatic scale in mind, you're atonal. You're not leading the listener to any particular spot, but you are playing with the effect of moving home around and around and around and around. And if you were very clever as an artist, you would say, I know that if I move this section of notes over here and I use these notes, I'll be suggesting a new home. And you'll already know what that home is that you're suggesting. So then you can use that information and you can maybe move home again. And if you keep it all planned and all organized and you understand what you're doing there, it may be an excellent adventure, like Lord of the Rings style epic adventure where home keeps moving and you keep having new destinations. But if you don't know what you're doing, if you can't plan it out properly, you can't expect where you're suggesting, you might get a little lost. And your listener is going to say, oh, lame. You were supposed to be my guide. You were supposed to take me on this adventure with you. And now we're lost. I'm so disappointed. Sad face, right? So this is the whole idea of scales, keys. This is the idea of conforming to tonality and conforming to the listener's expectations. Feel free to break those expectations. Totally fine. All right. So scales, keys, all this stuff. The last thing that I want to talk about is, okay, we can move home. That's great. It's a great tool to create variation. You can use the same sounds over and over again, but use them in relation to a new home, like Mary had a little lamb. 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 You can move home around and you can play with the effect of moving home. But what if we had a more practical application of this? The best application of this idea of scales and keys and which key to choose usually comes from your choice of instruments. If you were playing on guitar just works better in certain keys. There's a system called the caged system of learning guitar. And it's basically learning chords, these groups of sounds that all work together. It's the idea of those chords, C, A, G, E, and D, being very friendly to the guitar. Here's a C. Very easy to play. Relatively easy to play. If you're new to guitar, it's hard to play. An A chord. a G chord, an E chord, and a D chord. Very friendly to guitar because I can use strings that I don't have to hold down. Makes it very easy to make this full, complete, resonant sound. C, A, G, E, D. Very good for guitar. But if I wanted to add like a band instrument into the mix, right? Let's say I wanted a trumpet or a trombone to join with me. The trumpet and the trombone are going to have to think real hard about the key that they're playing in because their instrument was made for a different key. Naturally, those instruments sound good in B flat. B flat and C are not really related to each other very, very closely. So that instrument was made to resonate, to create sounds that don't match up to the sounds that you've chose. If it's C and you want that B flat, it's going to be kind of a clashy sound. Not entirely unuseful, not entirely bad, but those considerations need to be made. So if you wanted to write a song for that trumpet player, maybe you would choose B flat as your home instead of C, or instead of G or E or any of those guitar friendly sounds. So the idea is that you need to consider what you're going to write this song for. You're going to write it for a reggae band or a ska band. Maybe write in a key that's very friendly to these instruments, horns, that sort of thing. Whenever it comes to piano, piano is real good at playing most keys, but some keys are easier to play than others. If you're thinking about the way that you need to arrange your fingers on the keys, maybe there's a time where you'll know like, oh, this particular passage might be difficult for a piano player because of the way that they've got to move their fingers. But for a trumpet player, it'd be very easy because trumpet players find it easy to jump large distances from note to note because they do it with their lips rather than their fingers. So knowing all these different things about all these different instruments, you have to consider them whenever you choose your key or your scale. All right. So that's a more practical application. The most practical application that I can give you is to know the key that your voice works well in. If you have a voice like mine, I love G because G just works. It just resonates for me. Do, 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 do. It's a very natural sound for my voice. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la, so, fa, mi, re, do. Just works for me. If you're a female, your voice is different from my voice. Maybe G is still good for you, but maybe a higher G instead of do, 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 do. Maybe you sing do, 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 and that's the comfortable G for you. But what you'll want to do is sing a song in the key of G because your voice naturally works for that key. If you were to go to a key that's substantially higher or substantially lower, you might have a hard time reaching all of those notes that you need to reach in the scale. So the best thing that you can do is, if you really, really want to learn to do music and sing and all that sort of thing, is find your range. Find where your voice starts to bottom out and start maybe sounding like it's forced or the tone isn't proper. Go up and find where your voice sounds like you can just really let loose and you can hit that note. You need to know that your range is going to cover the song and it's going to sound good too. You might be singing the note, do, 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 but if you sing the note as down, 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 it's different, right? You can tell the difference. So I'm going to give you a minute. I want you to go ahead and come up with a melody. Use some of these sounds. Do, mi, so, mi, do. Do, re, mi, re, do. Or just come up with your own sounds. Maybe steal something from another song. Add your own words, add your own rhythm. Maybe you'll end up coming up with something completely different. But depending on the song you started with, that song uses a scale. So depending on the song you start with, you're going to probably be conforming to the scale that that song uses. Take a few moments. If you come up with a good one, take a video, tag me in it, upload it here to YouTube, or tell me about it on Facebook. Show me your melody. I would love to hear it. Melody to calm a baby. Ah, very good. You're talking about Lydian. We didn't quite get to talk about accidentals and like out of scale notes as deep as I wanted to, but basically you can take some of those out of key notes. You can understand what new home is being suggested, and you can use that for your effect. When Laura asks about lullabies, frequently lullabies use what they call a Lydian sound. So instead of having this fourth note, do, re, mi, fa, that fa sound is going to be altered just a little bit upward to this in between note. This in between note is going to suggest to the listener that G is home. So we're going to kind of confuse our listener. We're going to say, oh, yeah, we are in the key of C. Now we're going to throw in this F sharp, this in between note from F and G. And our listeners are going to say, that doesn't quite suggest C to me. That suggests G is home. And with that effect, we're able to get this lullaby sound, this kind of peaceful, dreamy, floaty feeling. Yeah. So a lot of lullabies are going to use this idea of suggesting a new home instead of the home that the listener originally thought. Lydian. Yes, I'll write that down for you. So this idea of using out of scale notes is not necessarily atonal, but if you're writing in Lydian, quote unquote, if you're writing in Lydian, then you're going to be no longer will you be conforming to tonal systems. You're going to be fighting that expectation. The listener wants to go back to C really, really, really bad, but you never give it to them. If you're writing in Lydian, you're going to know I am constantly suggesting to the listener that home is not exactly where they thought it was. And if you're very smart about the way you use that, you're very smart about the information that you give out to the listener, you'll be able to sustain that floaty feeling, that Lydian feeling. You can look that up, Lydian, and you can look for songs that are written in a Lydian mode, and you will hear something that does not conform to the standard tonal system. If you look up modes as well, you'll be able to find all sorts of modes that do not conform to the tonal system, but they do have an effect. And quite often, I mean, they're very commonly used. Quite often, that effect is quite pleasing. It's also very dependable. If you play in Lydian, you're going to get that lullaby feeling. But depending on how you accent the notes, how many notes you put in there, how quickly do you divide your heartbeat? Are you going up? Are you going down? Are you waving? You'll be able to get a nuance on the idea of Lydian. Are there any questions before I go? Because we are about out of time. Sometimes there's a lag on the chat, so I'll hang around for just a second. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, we talked about scales today. We talked about why it's important to understand a scale and understand that every note in the scale functions. All these sounds function to take you back to your starting point, back to home, back to do, back to tonic, back to one. All of those notes should be doing that for you. And luckily, this system is heavily ingrained. We all have this system ingrained in our brains from a young age. If we break that, if we do not conform to that system, we can get interesting effects. If we go out of the scale and suggest a new home to our listener, we can go on a grand epic adventure. But we don't want to get lost. We want to know what's the new home, what's our new destination. And if you're able to keep track of that well as a writer, you can make that journey a very, very pleasing, satisfying journey because the listener will think, wow, look how far we've gone. And here we are now back at home. Whew. So that's what a scale is for. And if you choose a key, you move this C, this home, if you move it someplace else, you can do that with intentionality. You can do that for a particular instrument and keep all of the instruments that you're writing for in mind. Most specifically, your own voice, because we all have a different voice that fits to different keys really well. Even though we're singing the same scales, our keys may be different. I like this sound, ah, but maybe you like ah. All right. Thank you so much. I don't think we have any questions. Thanks for joining me here today. This is definitely the most arbitrary, difficult subject to talk about in music. I want to break it down and make it very, very easy for you to understand. If you have any questions about this, just chat it to me, leave a comment. I'm going to go ahead and log out now, and I'll get ready for Twitch in about 8 minutes. Thank you so much for joining me. Farewell.